This is the Green Room. I'm Caitlin Matson. Joining me in the Green Room today, Dr. Timothy Shade, professor of music, director of bands at Wichita State University. He and a couple of his colleagues got together and started the Wichita Wind Symphony, and they have their inaugural performance this weekend. Hello, Timothy.
Hello, Caitlin.
Thank you so much for being with me today. I'm excited about this new venture. Tell us all about how it began and where the idea of it came from.
Well, we had a few years ago, actually, in Wichita, there was a professional wind ensemble, and it sort of kind of went away. And since I've been back in town, this is my seventh year at Wichita State University. Several of us have kind of been talking about getting the band back together, as it were. There's such great musicians, so many great musicians in town. And how can we bring sort of another element of performing arts to the community? And so Evan Ricker and Courtney Long and myself just started talking and said, well, what would it be like? Could we do this? Is there capacity for it? I said, I surely would love to conduct it. So many friends and like I said, wonderful musicians, and said, let's give it a whirl. And so we said, what better place to try it than sort of around Memorial Day? And so we put together a season and started kicking it off. And so here we go.
So your first performance is on Sunday.
That's correct. Yeah, real quick.
Isn't it amazing how fast things can come about? So it is this Sunday, May the 28th. It's at 6:30. And it is a Memorial Day themed concert. Music to honor those who have served. Is that correct?
That's right. We sort of took it as we wanted to kind of be sort of a celebration of America, but at the same time of those that have served. So it's kind of got three different parts to it. It should be about an hour long, outside in the wonderful amphitheater on the campus of Wichita State University, a space that we want to see utilized more. And so we said, what great way to do it. The weather's beautiful right now. We're not too hot yet, not too cold. Hopefully the rain stays away. And we'll have some beautiful sort of like patriotic music, and then a nice reverential section, an armed forces salute. So we get to honor our armed forces individuals, and then of course some marches that everybody loves to hear. So we think it's a great smattering of music featuring the ensemble.
The concert is free of charge. For information about the Wichita Wind Symphony, their website is wichitawinds.org, wichitawinds.org. They also have a presence on social media. You can look them up on Facebook. So I'm really curious about you in particular as a musician growing up. What was the deciding factor for you that you wanted to make winds
Oh,
band your focus, instead of an orchestra strings? I imagine you yourself are you a brass player?
oh yeah. What was the giveaway that I was a brass player, right? That's everybody. I was totally a brass player. I started playing an instrument called the euphonium. It's somewhere between a tuba and a trombone. So we kind of play in the same register as a trombone, but we look like a shrunk tuba. So it's a fun instrument. And I just sort of took to it quickly. I grew up in a musical household. My mother was always singing. I sang a lot in church, and music was just where I felt at home and at ease. And the euphonium primarily existing in the band, that
Yeah.
was where home was for me. And sort of, I just kind of kept going with it, and like I said, had an affinity for it and was good. And bands is sort of, there's a wonderful array of colors and function that is a little different than the orchestra. Of course, the orchestra, this wonderfully large instrument, has tons of color and history, but the band is new and fresh in a different way. The repertoire is so dynamic. And so that always kind of drew me to it in a different way. Of course, I've conducted orchestras and I love orchestra. I still stay there. In fact, I tell all my students, the orchestra is where your career can be, but the band is where you can experiment. And that's kind of where this ensemble, we think, can kind of explore a little bit, is we're trying to really play a lot of new music. And that's where I love sort of the band is new music and new composers and new sounds.
So the idea of a wind ensemble, a band, as being like a separate professional entity in the world of classical music is still relatively new. Do you think that's why we don't have all that many professional wind ensembles? People aren't clamoring to get tickets for the big wind ensemble that's in every major metropolitan city.
I do. I think that's actually a great point. It's not as well known when we think of a band, we think of a marching band or something you would see on a football field, I think. In fact, some of my friends sort of think of band as a four-letter word, kind of versus sort of this symphonic, more elite or artistic ensemble. But I'm here to tell you, an ensemble of winds and percussion can turn the same beautiful phrase as a symphony orchestra. And I do think that that's kind of this new concept of what can it do? How dynamic can it be? What is the artistic potential of it? It hasn't been explored as fully, I think, as it could be. Going downtown and listening to the Wichita Symphony Orchestra has this sort of grandeur and wonderful quality to it. And I would challenge everybody, go listen to a wind ensemble and see if you feel the same way. There's a visceral quality that exists in both arenas. I think
Yeah.
that we have been concerned about, well, we don't recognize some of the composers, or we don't understand some of this music, and maybe we wouldn't like it. However, I'm here to tell you it's very powerful. The
Yes.
new composers today are wonderful voices. They have wonderful voices and are really writing some inventive music.
And I think that we can all relate to having really powerful experiences in music because of band, simply because so many of us were in high school band. And, for instance, here in Kansas, so much of Kansas's rule, not enough students to form a full orchestra. Nobody in town takes violin lessons, at least where I grew up.
Right.
So we had a really fantastic band.
Uh-huh.
And so everybody who loved music in my small town loved band. And those who went on to have a career in music, be a music educator, that was their thing, that was their focus, that was their experience. So, speaking as somebody who kind of lived that, I can say that some of my most monumental formative experiences as a teenager were because of band.
That's right.
And you know what? We just heard Gustav Holst's Second Suite. I remember playing that in high school in like an honors ensemble,
That's right.
and just having the time of my life. It can be really powerful.
Well, and speaking of Holst too, that has one of the biggest euphonium solos in the band repertoire. So that was one of the pieces that
Yeah.
kind of like, yeah, in that first movement, yum da dee dee dum. That's a big
Yes.
solo, really, really popular in Europe. And so, yeah, these like really formidable moments of playing in an ensemble of winds and percussion is like really like crazy, and learn all the friendships and all of those experiences. And we just sort of kind of go, oh, I can't do that when I grow up, but community bands are really, really popular. And
Mhm.
so it's that next level of art. How can we get to it? How can we proliferate it with that same ensemble? And I think that's really that's what we're trying to explore. That's what we're trying to bring to people. And I think that nostalgia, right? That thought of, wow, I enjoyed this so much. What would it be like to bring that to audiences now a little bit later and say, listen to this,
Yeah.
feel this, and experience this again. And I think that's what could be really neat about it.
We'll be back and talk more with Dr. Timothy Shade about the Wichita Wind Symphony. This is Leonard. Oh no, this is the United States Marine Band playing Leonard Bernstein's overture to Candide. The overture to Candide, that is by Leonard Bernstein, performed by the President's own United States Marine Band. And I'm speaking with Dr. Timothy Shade, who's the professor of music, director of bands at Wichita State University. And he and a couple of his colleagues have formed the brand new Wichita Wind Symphony, and they have their inaugural performance this Sunday. It is at the Dirksen Fine Arts Center Amphitheater, which is just, it's right behind Dirksen Fine Arts Center on Wichita State University campus. It is free to the public, starts at 6:30. Hello, Timothy.
Hello, hello.
All right. So when you envision the Wichita Wind Symphony in the future,
Mm.
what would you like to see? I mean, what would you ideally like to, how did you like to see it grow?
What I've thought about is really thinking about impactful programming that is sort of challenging what we think about as far as the band. I mean, you can't. I think people sort of have asked me, well, why isn't it called the Wichita Band or the Wichita Wind Band? Why are you calling it a wind symphony? And all of these terms are all the same. Wichita Wind Ensemble or Band, they're all the same thing, meaning a collection of wind and percussion instruments. But what we want them to do is think about their function is a little differently. And so we want them to be thought of as more symphonic in nature. And with it, you sort of have this artistic concept is how can we think a little bit bigger than the ceremonial aspect that a band is typically used, or marches or things like that. And we were talking a little bit about that on the break even.
Yeah.
So for me, it's how can I create the most dynamic programs for our students, or excuse me, for our community members and our players to bring to our audiences, and that's what we're working towards. Really, a lot of new music. How can we get new composers and new compositions to weave programs together that our audiences feel something that maybe they didn't expect to feel? And I found, especially with where we are today, that's really the most impact that we can make is if our audience leaves going, wow, or man, that made me really sad,
Yeah.
or I am just so excited. That's really what we're trying to do.
Yeah.
And we're starting with kind of a 4 to 6 concert series a season, and I think that's plenty. Especially starting from scratch, and we'll see where it goes from there. But we're not trying to do anything too large, but just enough that we can kind of give a good new understanding of some repertoire that's out there for this ensemble.
So did you just send out an email notification to music educators around town, professional musicians around town, letting them know we're going to do this? Let us know if you want to take part. I mean, who makes up the band?
That's a great question. So I didn't know if there would be enough interest. So kind of how we did it is we sent out a feasibility to a lot of the people that we know might, or at least that we thought would be interested, and got a really overwhelmingly positive response. People are like, absolutely, let us know what's going on. And for me, it's important that if we're asking musicians to play, that they're compensated appropriately. And of course, for a startup, you don't have any money. So it's like, I said, well, just know for the first few concerts, we probably can't pay you. And they were like, that's fine. Let's just get this going. This sounds so amazing. Let's go.
Oh
And
gosh,
that
the
tells
labor
you
of love.
that's right. And then that tells you just how much love, that's the best word, there is sort of for music and for performing something that I think they see a really good opportunity for. So from there, then we kind of said, wow, we've got this wonderful body of players. Let's just sort of we'll assign some players this first concert, see how it fits, and then we'll assign the next concert and we'll kind of see how it goes. Kind of wanting to bring everybody along. We didn't do any formal auditions. There's been a lot of questions. Oh, did you do auditions for this? And we didn't. We're just trying to kind of keep it as open and communal and as we can. But it sort of has started with our people that we know. So it's going to have to get more formalized because we don't want to exclude anybody.
Yeah.
But it's got to be in that good sort of middle ground of, it's not really a y'all come group, but it's we want it to be a certain level as well. It's tricky, we don't want to leave anybody out.
Right. And for anybody who wants to donate to the cause, or, wants to, talk with you about future sponsorship or anything like that, would you just direct them to your website?
Absolutely, yeah, and we're trying to get all that up and running as well. So it will get there, but yeah, the website's the best place to go.
wichitawinds.org. They have a presence on Facebook as well, on social media. You can search them up there. Their inaugural concert is this Sunday, May the 28th at 6:30. And it is in honor of Memorial Day. A guest artist, a guest narrator, Alan Held, joining you for Aaron Copland's Lincoln portrait. That'll be great. And it's kind of like overall patriotic music to honor those who have served.
That's
Sounds like
right.
a fantastic first concert. And Timothy, please come back anytime you're preparing a concert so we can keep talking about it. I think it's so great.
Absolutely, I'd love to. Thanks so much, Caitlin.
Yeah, have a great concert.
Yep, see you later.